We are back. It is a new show. A lot of emails increasingly over the last few days saying, when are you guys going to return? We are indeed back. And wow, what a period of a couple of weeks. Obviously, we had the Indiegogo campaign and so much other stuff. And we'll talk about the end of that a little bit later in the show. And we'll sort of get back into everything that's going on. But I do want to talk about my trip, Lewis. As some people may know, former TV director, and my brother, Natan Pakman, going to graduate school currently in Israel. I've never been to Israel, finally got the opportunity to go to Israel and visit Natan and hang out and see different things. And to say that it was an incredible experience would just be a drastic understatement. I mean, such an interesting country, saw so many interesting things historically and in so many other ways. And I'll talk to you about some of the things that went on. One of the things I want to address is this issue of Israeli airport security. We've talked for years, Lewis, about the TSA and about the effectiveness relative to the invasion of privacy and so many other issues. And after experiencing Israeli airport security firsthand, I have to tell you that it has only confirmed everything I thought the TSA was doing wrong. I mean, just everything handled differently in Tel Aviv at the the international airport there. First thing, I flew to Tel Aviv from Paris, from Charles de Gaulle International Airport. When you get to Paris and you say, I'm going to Tel Aviv, there's already a separate check-in line, not to be intermixed with the other flights. And there is a sort of accreditation identity check. There's a short interview. There's random additional bag screening when you're getting on the jetway. This is in France, right? This is another country just to fly to Tel Aviv. I'm curious whether Tel Aviv airport says that that must be done in other countries when you're flying to Tel Aviv, or whether it's a proactive measure or whatever the case is. So there was that. Once I arrived in Tel Aviv, questions where you can tell the person asking the questions knows exactly what to look for, knows exactly the order in which to ask the questions. Looking at my passport, which says I was born in Argentina, it's an American passport. When did you move to the US from Argentina? How many days are you staying? What are you doing there, etc.? And I know you've experienced this, Lewis. It's just a totally different feel in terms of the competence of the person you're talking to than when you talk to somebody at TSA.
Well, TSA questioning is how are you doing today and where are you going? That's it. So yes, it's a completely different system. And when I went to Israel, they asked me about my last name. It was
Right.
revealed that my father was from Iran, and so of course, immediate red flag to them. I was questioned for quite a while, but it was clear that I was not a terrorist and was not carrying anything strange.
And Natan told me a fascinating story of when he was questioned once at that airport on the way out, I believe, on a short trip. And he was being questioned by somebody who was clearly sort of training. And there was like a supervisor standing behind the woman doing the questions. And she asked Natan a couple of questions. And then the supervisor came over. And I think you'll find this super interesting. And the supervisor asked a couple of more questions. And then they said, okay, you can go on. And Natan walks by. And as he's walking away, he hears the supervisor explaining to the young woman who was in training, saying, so the important question there was, and then kind of trailing off as Natan walked away. And it's all very calculated. There may be 7 or 8 questions, and really many of those may be sort of setup questions to then be able to gauge a reaction to the truly important question. Just very extensive training.
Yes, and I was asked questions over again to see if my answers were the same, which of course I realized and was annoyed by, but I understand the need for such a protocol.
So while I was there, security when you go into the mall, the grocery store, outdoor markets everywhere, heavy military presence, all of the young kids doing their mandatory 2 or 3 years, many of them carrying what are sort of colloquially considered assault weapons. People very calm with it, not really seen as a big deal, part of day-to-day life. But what was very interesting to me was that in the US, there's this gun culture element where because of law enforcement and the government having guns, the citizenry needs to be armed with guns because at any point the government may become tyrannical. And nobody I spoke to in discussing the sort of security state and status quo in Israel felt that they needed to have guns in order to protect themselves from what is very clearly a very well-equipped military that makes its presence seen on a day-to-day basis.
I think that in the United States, the people feel separate from the government and from the military. But
Hmm.
in Israel, everyone goes through the military. I feel like it's just more, there's no separation there really. So they don't even consider that.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't consider that, but I think that that does make a lot of sense. And then lastly, on the way out of Israel, and I'm still very jet lagged, got in very early yesterday, and it was just an insane 12 and a half hour flight, longest flight I've ever been on. Outside the airport, probably 2 to 3 miles out, you get stopped, and there are questions. Where have you been staying? What are you doing here? The person sort of taking a once over of the car that you're in and the things you have with you. When you get to the terminal door, there is another layer of security there. They don't talk to everybody. They might just look, they might just see what is going on, but they might ask you a couple of questions. When you get to the terminal check-in area, before you can approach the actual counter to drop your bags, there's another layer of questions there. And then when you go through what here would be called sort of like the metal detector area, where sometimes they have porno scanners, they actually have a security person there who stands there and sort of talks to you and walks you through. They say, okay, you don't need to take your shoes off. What do you have, a laptop? Is it a tablet or not? And you can tell that there's another sort of emotional, psychological evaluation happening there. Passport control was very, very simple. But then there was another layer of security when you're about to get on the plane, another set of questions there talking to everybody. So again, my general sense coming away from this was that these people know what they're doing. This is all very cohesive. I got the sense that this type of security is very effective, and the statistics show that it is, versus these sort of, I don't want to say minimally trained, but trained in a way that is questionable with regard to how effective it is. And as we saw, 95% of banned items getting through TSA during these test scenarios, etc. Really just a totally different approach. And I have to tell you, Lewis, I got the impression that it's very effective.
Yeah, because it's not really about what you might be carrying on you. It's about you and your demeanor. And you would think that if all of these people are experts, how many people questioned you, talked to you, at least interacted with you in some way? What are the chances that one of them would catch on if you were up to no good?
You would think the chances are significantly higher, no question about it.